Weeks after becoming the country's acting ruler, the Yemeni vice president threatens to leave the capital if President Saleh continues to get in the way. Is the deal to transfer power starting to unravel? And could the long-serving president be planning to stay on, running his country from behind the scenes? This is Inside Story. Hello again, I'm James Bays. The crisis in Yemen is taking an unexpected turn. You'll remember under the peace deal agreed in November, Ali Abdullah Saleh was supposed to give up his powers, becoming honorary president. His deputy, Abed Rabbo Mansour Hadi, was given acting control until elections in February. But now Mr Hadi is threatening to leave the capital, Sana'a, claiming the outgoing president and his allies don't stop interfering in his duties. He made the announcement after top loyalists to Saleh called him a traitor, creating further problems for Yemen's long-term leader, who earlier this week said he would stay in the country, reversing a pledge to travel to the United States. Meanwhile, the UN's human rights chief, Navi Pillay, has condemned an amnesty granted to those who've committed war crimes in Yemen. A Gulf-brokered power transfer deal, which Saleh signed in November, has given him immunity from prosecution. Mohamed has more.
The Yemeni vice president has threatened to leave the capital of Sana'a, separating himself from the government's actions over the next few weeks if President Saleh and his supporters in government continue to interfere in his powers. President Saleh has been continuing to put pressure on his vice president to block the progress in implementing the GCC broker deal to hand over power. Almost 2 months after the deal was signed, tension has risen between the president and his long-trusted vice president. The unexpected rift came up to the surface as Saleh's supporters expressed their anger at the vice president, accusing him of betrayal and calling him a traitor. This was followed by the president heading a meeting of the Supreme Security Committee, an action considered a breach of the agreement by his opponents, who claim it shows Saleh has backed down on his commitments. His plans to travel to the US for medical treatment are also now in doubt. This is what the White House had to say.
U.S. officials are continuing to consider President Saleh's request to enter the country for the sole purpose of seeking medical treatment, but initial reports that permission has already been granted are not true.
But President Saleh himself denied he was ill or traveling to the U.S. for medical reasons.
I'm going to America, but not for medical treatment. I'm fine.
Saleh's action has triggered a crack in the ruling parties as a significant number of the party's members announced their defection, joining the revolution. The free members of the Popular Congress, as they call themselves, even declared their opposition to granting the president any kind of amnesty.
I affirm our rejection to any immunity or amnesty for any killer or corrupt official.
The amnesty offered in the GCC deal has also been attacked by the UN human rights chief, Navi Pillay. She said the proposed deal, granting immunity from prosecution to all involved in the violence, would breach international law. Hundreds of thousands again took to the streets on Friday in 18 provinces of the country, calling for the amnesty deal to be revoked. They also demand that Mr. Saleh, who has ruled Yemen for more than 30 years, honor his agreement to relinquish his presidency next month and to release all political prisoners. Mohamed for Inside Story.
So is President Saleh still running the country from behind the scenes? To help answer this question, we have our panel of guests. In Beirut, Joseph Keshishian, author on Middle East affairs and columnist with Gulf News. In Jeddah, Khaled Almaeena, political analyst and editor-at-large of a number of Saudi publications. And joining us in London, Mohamed, former advisor to the Prime Minister and now an opposition activist. Great to have you all on board. Mr. Qubaty, if I can start by asking you, how serious is this latest crisis?
Well, I think the crisis for the people who have been following what was happening in Yemen, they are not actually surprised. We knew all the time that we are dealing with a man who is a master of mischief. And he's trying to buy time. He has lost any credibility. It's not a matter of deficit of credibility. This man has no any credibility at all now. And the last move, which we have heard of, I mean, this is complete infringement and quite a serious breach of the GCC initiative, when the president goes and heads what he has called now a Supreme Security Committee, whereas there is another security committee which has been formed 7 by 7, 7 from the opposition and 7 from his party, and headed by the acting president or vice president. So we are now seeing another of the mercurial gambits of Ali Abdullah Saleh. He's trying to push things as we have expected all the time. This man has came back to Yemen to derail the whole accord. He doesn't believe in it. He wants his family, his sons and his nephews and his half-brothers to continue ruling from behind the scenes, backseat drivers, while he himself also, he says he's going to continue in the country even after the early presidential elections as a leader of the ruling party, whereby he would be saying, I'm the leader of the party, I'm calling Abed Rabbo Mansour, because Abed Rabbo Mansour has the position of the vice president of the party or vice chairman of the party, so he'd call him to meetings and then instruct him. And as it has appeared over the past 5 days, Abed Rabbo Mansour and 2 other quite important leaders within the ruling party, previous party, Mr. Abdul Karim al-Iryani, a previous prime minister and vice chairman of the party, and the Minister of Defense, they have boycotted such meetings. And this is one of the flaws and actually one of the structural defects in the GCC initiative, and as well in the implementation mechanism for that initiative, because it's all built up on Abed Rabbo Mansour. And if Abed Rabbo Mansour by any means resigns or leaves the scene, then the whole initiative and the whole accord is completely lost.
Okay,
so
Khaled in Jeddah, you are there in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia key in coming up with this accord. How is this being viewed there?
Well, it's a very ominous sign in the sense that what is happening now is a backtracking. Everyone was very satisfied with the GCC deal. We thought it will happen. There will be a handover. The Yemeni people will decide their own fate. But now to go ahead and head supreme security committees and all, I think is a backtrack, and it's a body blow to the whole accord. And I really believe that if President Ali Abdullah Saleh wants the safety and security of Yemen, I think they should go ahead and implement the deal immediately.
Joseph in Beirut, remind us what's at stake here, because this is a very unstable country.
Well, obviously, the Yemen is on the verge of collapse, internal collapse, economically, politically, militarily as well. A civil war has been averted so far, but we are on the brink of major catastrophe if this deal does not go through. Now, of course, Ali Abdullah Saleh agreed to this GCC-sponsored accord, but his heart was not in it from the very beginning. Ali Abdullah Saleh has been in power for over 3 decades. He does not want to leave. He has tried to gain as much time as possible, and now he feels that the international community has lost the appetite because it has a full plate with the European crisis, in the Middle East with developments in Syria, and more ominous threats coming from the Persian Gulf, a region with the Straits of Hormuz. So therefore, he in Yemen, in Sana'a, feels that he can gain time, that he can win this over. But at the end of the day, really, what this indicates is that Ali Abdullah Saleh does not really care that much about Yemen or about the Yemeni people, because as long as he stays in power, as long as he maintains his insistence that he is the legitimate president of the country, where he has lost all legitimacy, none of the crisis on the ground will change.
OK, well, we keep talking about this deal. Let's just remind the viewers of the deal that was put together by the Gulf Cooperation Council, which Saleh finally signed on November 23rd, after backing down from signing it on 3 different occasions. Now, under the deal, Saleh was to hand over power to his deputy, Abed Rabbo Mansour Hadi, who took office from the 23rd of December. Hadi was then expected to form a unity government, which would include members of the opposition, and call for a presidential election within 2 months after Saleh leaves office. During this period, Saleh was allowed to retain his title but no presidential powers. Controversially, the deal offered Saleh immunity from prosecution, something activists in the opposition have constantly rejected. We'll come back to that whole idea of amnesty a little bit later on, Khaled, but do you think this deal has now been broken, or do you think there's a chance to get things back on track?
Well, I'm an optimist. I believe it can get back on track, but I really believe President Saleh should put the interest of the nation above and the people who are dying every day. I believe that Saleh should come up and act in a statesman manner, which has never happened before, because the opposition is growing, and reports that are coming from Yemen, and many of the Yemeni people whom I spoke to who live abroad have said that they have no trust in this individual, and that they're afraid that he'll go back on, and more people will come in and die in the process. So I also believe that if the GCC states could then send another delegation, but then again, if one party is not going to go ahead and implement or backtrack and use all the shenanigans at their disposal, I doubt that the deal will get through.
Mr. Qubaty, Mohamed Qubaty in London, you know all these figures extremely well. You know President Sateh, you know the Vice President as well. These 2 men were very close, and now they seem to be at loggerheads.
Well, actually, if we go back, I mean, a lot of people perhaps have forgotten that during the signing of the accord, we expected the Vice President to be there, you know. Unfortunately, he never appeared at all during that whole ceremony of signing the accords in Riyadh. And that was from day one. It was obvious that the 2 men don't look eye to eye to a lot of the ideas about implementing such an initiative. And Abed Rabbo Mansour has been there and he has served the man. But he has felt all during this time that Ali Abdullah Saleh is just only buying time, and he'll look for any excuse to derail such an agreement.
You mean in recent times? But he's been his vice president for some time. Some would even say in the past his stooge. Is that right?
Yes, you could say to that. I mean, if we go back to history, just take the example in Egypt, when Sadat was a stooge for Nasser, but after Nasser disappeared from the theater or from the stage, Sadat came as a new man. And I think Ali Abdullah Saleh now is very much worried that Hadi is becoming somebody different from where he expected him to be. You know, he wanted somebody who will just toe the line. He will continue just as during the 3 months when, or more than 3 months, when Ali Abdullah Saleh was for treatment in Saudi Arabia, Ali Abed Rabbo Mansour was constitutionally the man who was running the show. But he was not running the show. It was the sons and nephews of Ali Abdullah Saleh who were running the show all during that time of the 4 months when Ali Abdullah Saleh was in Saudi Arabia. Ali Abdullah Saleh thought that this thing could continue not only during these 3 months of the first interim period, but perhaps in the next 2 years of the interim period, the second part of the interim period. But Hadi, I think now, realizes that this is now going to go so far that it might not only put the security and interest of Yemen into danger, but the whole thing will threaten the security and stability of the region itself. Because if we go now to Yemen and we face some internal conflicts again, and suddenly a full-blown civil war erupts, then I think this is a great danger to the region and to the world. I think the people now, our brothers in the GCC and the UN Security Council permanent members have got to come now and use the stick. They have used the carrot with Ali Abdullah Saleh for the past 10 months. I think now the stick. We want to see that at least some movement towards freezing some of his assets. I think then perhaps the man will realize that People are actually breathing on his neck, and he has got to come and realize that he has got to stick to what he has signed and to get committed to what and to allow the implementation of all the accord stipulations.
Now, Joseph, Mohamed was talking there about the sons of Saleh and the nephews of Saleh. How much power does he still have in the security services of Yemen?
Oh, he does a great deal. But before I answer your question, I just want to add something to the previous speaker's point, which I think is very valuable. To use the stick or the threat of a stick on Ali Abdullah Saleh at this stage is really irrelevant, because this is a man who has escaped an assassination attempt, and that did not move him. He was away from Yemen for several months, and that did not move him. And he is maneuvering and so on and so forth in order to position himself to come back to power and make sure that not only his son and his nephews, his sons and his nephews, and other members of the family maintain their privileges, but the entire setup in the security system that really backs him up. Now, Mr. Al-Hadi, who is the vice president, of course, and who has a legitimate mandate from the GCC Accord to go ahead and move on the plan, to implement the plan, should not be sidetracked at this point. I think that there are two other parts to this agreement that must be fulfilled if we want to see Ali Abdullah Saleh politically give in, so to speak. The second step is really the 21 February presidential meeting. Everything must be done to make sure that nothing postpones this presidential plebiscite that's going to happen. It is very critical that Mr. Al-Hadi keep his cool. The next step is that. And of course, the third issue is the whole question of amnesty, which we'll talk in a second. But this is tied in precisely to why Ali Abdullah Saleh is creating all these excuses now not to go to the United States or not to go to any other country in order to protect himself, because he knows that, politically speaking, members of the Yemeni opposition have a case. The case is that, in fact, that he could lose a potential trial at the international forum. That's why he is delaying and delaying.
Joseph, you talk there about the amnesty, but there are problems on that, because the UN's human rights chief, Nave Pillay, has warned Yemen not to grant amnesty to those who've committed war crimes. She was talking about the GCC deal that granted immunity for prosecution for Saleh. She made it clear such action, if taken, would violate Yemen's international obligations and break international law, and perhaps set a precedent for others to escape prosecution. In a statement, she said, and I quote, "International law and the UN policy are clear on the matter. Amnesties are not permissible if they prevent the prosecution of individuals who may be criminally responsible for international crimes, including war crimes and crimes against humanity." She added, "Based on information we've gathered, there is reason to believe that some of these crimes were committed in Yemen during the period for which an amnesty is under consideration." Now, Mohamed, I'd like to ask you about that. First, I'm not clear from the GCC deal. Who's covered by that amnesty? Saleh, his family, his allies? Exactly who's on the list?
Okay, just before I move to that, there's a very important thing I think which the panelists and your viewers have got to understand. I think my friend in Beirut has mentioned 2 points about the coming elections and the other issue, but the most, and the issue you have mentioned now is regard to amnesty, but the most important challenging step, which is actually confronting the whole GCC initiative, is the question of redeployment and restructuring of the armed forces and the security forces and the intelligence agencies. If these forces and units stay in the hands of Ali Abdullah Saleh's sons and family, then the whole deal doesn't mean anything. And that is the big challenge which now Abed Rabbo Mansour realizes that he will not gain on. Because these units have got Abed Rabbo Mansour now effectively should be the head and the commander of all these forces.
Okay,
and none
Mohamed,
of these forces actually obey
Mohamed,
him.
can I ask you, though, about the amnesty? What's your understanding? Who's covered by it?
The amnesty, as far as we know, it covers the president and some 500 plus
named?
of the names.
Are they named?
500, more than 500 people, his family, his nephews, his sons, and his half-brothers, and there are other people who amount to about 500 names, which he has presented to the GCC, to our brothers in the GCC countries, that he would like them to move at the beginning with him to leave the country, and he wants amnesty for them.
Khaled in Jeddah, what's your view on what the UN have said about this amnesty? They think it might be illegal under international law.
Well, yes, it is. I know, Ms. Pillay, and I really believe so, that those who have committed crime and have caused bloodshed and mayhem, and if proved against them, you cannot have a preemptive amnesty. I mean, if these people had done a crime and committed a crime, and as we saw all over with bloodshed and people dying, I think people should be taken to task and should be taken to court. Now, if there has been a deal between the GCC regarding President Ali Abdullah Saleh and a few other people, but I think 500 is a lot of people. We just cannot, with a flip of the pen, just say these people can go. I really believe that the Yemeni people have the right to question, to probe, and take to the courts anybody who has caused innocent people to die.
Now, Joseph, you mentioned it before. This amnesty was obviously one of the reasons Mr. Saleh was looking very keenly at going to the United States. Yet the United States say, yes, you can come, but only if you can prove you're coming for medical treatment. You can't stay here.
Because the United States is not a signatory to the International Criminal Court Accords, which means that if Ali Abdullah Saleh were to go to the United States and stay there while these proceedings are going on at the United Nations and elsewhere, and it is clearly illegal to give amnesty to criminals, there is no doubt about that part, then the United States will be stuck in having Ali Abdullah Saleh stay forever, essentially. And there are precedents to this. I mean, people forget Marcos of the Philippines that was stuck in the United States for several decades before he died in Honolulu and had to be repatriated. His body had to be repatriated. The United States does not want to be in this kind of situation again. The experiences of the past, whether it was with Marcos, with the Shah of Iran, with others, has not really has taught the United States a lesson. They don't want to repeat the same mistakes again. And that is why the reason why Washington insists that Ali Abdullah Saleh can come, but only for medical purposes. On the larger scale, however, and this is where the Yemeni opposition has really dropped the ball, they have not really picked up the ball in saying, we're going to take this man to court and we're going to prove in an international legal forum that in fact he has committed these atrocities against the Yemeni people. Instead, they have been bickering amongst themselves, and unlike in Libya, where the opposition has really united very quickly to get rid of the Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi, in Yemen, opportunity after opportunity has been created for Ali Abdullah Saleh to abuse the privileges that he enjoyed.
Mohamed in London, once you get an elected government in Yemen after February's election, an elected president, then an elected government, are they going to respect this amnesty anyway, or are they going to ask for him to be put on trial?
I think the whole question of amnesty is a nominal matter. You know, we have said for a long time that this amnesty would not stick, or immunity he is going to get, it will not stick anywhere in the world. The only way for it to stick, if he decides, like Zain al-Abidin bin Ali of Tunisia, to go and live in Jeddah there, in spite of there is now a sentence of 35 years on him, prison, he managed to escape from that, prison sentence. So the whole question of amnesty is not actually a big problem. It's a nominal thing. We know that any amnesty given to any person which contradicts with the international law, it will not stick anywhere. Anybody, if Ali Abdullah Saleh appears anywhere after this amnesty being given by the Yemeni parliament, anywhere in Europe or anywhere in the United States, anybody can take a pot shot at him and he will get him.
OK, Mohamed, can I just ask Khaled that question that you raised there, the possibility of amnesty in Jeddah, in Saudi Arabia? You're there. I know you don't speak for the Saudi government. Do you think it's a possibility? Quickly, please, sir.
Well, I don't think so. It's a possibility because he was here when after he was treated, he went out. But I would like to add something to Mohamed from London. What I would like to say is that, and also disagree a little bit with Joe, times have changed since the Shah and Marcos, even if he goes to the United States, they will not keep him for a long time and bundle him to somewhere. Now, coming to Jeddah, I don't think so. We have a long border with Yemen. It's a porous border. We do not want to be involved. We try to use our good offices through the GCC. But the Yemen problem is very complex. And Ali Abdullah Saleh, I think, should rise above all these things and know that his presence in Yemen is going to cause a lot of mayhem. And as the gentleman
Khaled,
said,
you say the problem is complex. We don't have time to solve it all today, but thanks to our panel, Joseph Keshishian in Beirut, Khaled Almaeena in Jeddah, Mohamed Qubaty in London. And that was Inside Story on Yemen. We'll be back in 24 hours' time from now. What should we discuss next time? What did you think of this show? I want to read all your emails, insidestory@aljazeera.net. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye now.